This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The drifters hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Journey with the cinephile, unseen, unseen. The veils twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 329. I am your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here, I'm going to be celebrating my last of Black History Month, representation in horror here, and this is going to be episode number 14 of doing these. So the first feature review is going to be a wild one of Welcome Home, Brother Charles from 1975. This is a low-budget blaxploitation film. So I'm pairing this up with Twisted from 2026, and this stars Digimon Housu, and also kind of doubles a little bit here for women in horror appreciation since his co-stars Lauren Lavera in it. So I kind of thought this would make an interesting little double feature here since, Housu is also a black man. So, yeah. And then for mini reviews here, I have Alice, Sweet Alice. This is my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch. This is from 1976. I gave a watch to Witchhammer from 1970. I also got to check out a couple screeners here. The first one's going to be the R.I.P Man from 2025, and then Anacoreta, which is from 2022, getting its wide release here in 2026. Then I also have a documentary here about extraterrestrials called Skywatcher from 2026. And then also I'm going to be doing 4 episodes from the final season of the original run of the Twilight Zone. I think that is season 5. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Just wait until Father gets home. Those words chilled us all as a child. Now they can thrill us as adults. My name is Dan B. Fierce, author of the book Father Figure, Suspenseful Tales of Fatherhood. The calloused hands of fear will wrap around the mind in this roller coaster collection of extreme, gory, and psychological short stories and flash fiction. Get your copy of Father Figure today at danbfiercebooks.com.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be. Creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And for my first mini review here is going to be Alice, Sweet Alice from 1976. This is directed by Alfred Soule, something along those lines. This is written by Rosemary Revito and Soule. And then this is starring Linda Miller, Mildred Clinton, Paula E. Shepard, as well as a young Brooke Shields. So this one here goes by the original title of Communion. Curious? But this is a B-horror, giallo, psychological thriller, serial killer, slasher, whodunit, crime drama film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 6.4 on IMDb and 3.4 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: in 1961, a divorced Catholic couple have their lives upended when their daughter Karen is murdered before her first communion. The suspect is her older sister Alice, and Karen is being portrayed by Shields, and then Alice by Shepard. So this is a film that I originally learned about when I was going through the Fangoria Top 300 Horror Films issue. I saw it and it didn't necessarily click for me, but I did give it a review with a critical eye some time ago, and I enjoyed it a little bit more then. So this is one that I knew I was pretty excited to check out, being more versed in like giallo films, and I thought it might work better for me. So I've also given this a rewatch here as part of my scouring through the sixes. So where I'm going to go ahead and start then is that this is interesting because I've seen it, be considered an American giallo. This explores interesting ideas with it, like with the ideas of what it uses for Alice being the prime suspect, the breakdown of the family unit, and how it factors in with something else that I wanted to do. So now that it's set up, let me delve more into what we're getting. Now, this is an American giallo more than a slasher film, in my opinion. Our killer is using a knife for the most part. They are masked, which makes it feel more like a slasher, but it isn't as sleazy as you'd get in like Italy around this time. This is more about the mystery and less about the murders themselves. We also have the character of Dom, who is the father here, a little bit estranged from the family because he is remarried and living elsewhere. He is portrayed by Niles McMaster. Now, he leads the investigation to prove that Alice didn't do these killings, where the detectives have her as the prime suspect. Now that I have the dynamic set up, this film wants you to believe that Alice is the killer. She's missing from her mother when Karen is killed. Now, when she shows back up with the veil that was for the communion in her pocket that belonged to Karen, it is more that we learn about Alice has some issues at school. It seems to go as far to say that she might have some sociopathic tendencies. She is callous for sure. It doesn't help that her aunt gets attacked, and she's convinced that it was Alice that did that, and her aunt would be Annie De Lorenzi, portrayed by Jane Laurie. And then there's also this like Mr. Alfonso, who is their landlord. He's very creepy. He's portrayed by Alfonso Di Noble. He accuses her as well. Shepard was great with her mannerisms and looks to help get these feelings across. So I do want to then shift gears. Now, I was raised Christian. My wife was Catholic, but she has since then kind of moved away from it. Now, she still carries guilt from that time, though. The film does an excellent job at just showing the grandeur of the church. It also has its dark side. There are sins that are in violation of the Ten Commandments, but those that are doing this are still consider themselves to be pious. They portray how this handles the scathing look at religion and its perversion. It was something that I appreciated. The other themes to include here would be how the church, which is considered a holy place, doesn't provide protection. As Karen is murdered in one, for an example, we see the sibling rivalry and parental favoritism. Part of this is in Alice's head, but it's Karen's time and her moment. Alice does appear to take more criticism for the time period that we follow her. There is a commentary on the failure of the adult institutions to protect the children, being more worried about their own issues. There's also some claustrophobic feel with the apartments and the state that they are in. So let's speed up for the story. Let's go over the acting performances. The cast is generally effective. I thought Miller was good as the struggling mother, who is commendable, and I think I like that she believes her daughter, especially Alice, that she did not commit fratricide. McMaster has some nice chemistry with her, and it works, signaling past feelings. Then we also have here Clinton's character, which would be Mildred Clinton, portraying Miss Dredoni. I thought she worked in her role as the caretaker for the priests. Shepard is great, and Shield was effective. We also here have Rudolph Willrich, who is Father Tom. There is Michael Hardstark, DeNoble, and the rest of the cast round us off for what was needed. All that's left then to be the filmmaking aspects. This has some great cinematography and framing, utilizing effective odd angles, the killer's mask and raincoat, similar to the one that Alice owns, cleverly create doubt about her involvement. The reveal was surprising The reveal was a surprising success, aided by limited and effective practical effects, including good-looking blood and well-done kills. The soundtrack enhances the film with an eerie, ethereal vibe. It captures the grand feel of the church that we continue to come back to. So in conclusion, this is a compelling piece of American horror that deftly blends the stylistic conventions of the Italian giallo, focusing on mystery, Catholic guilt, and shocking violence. With a uniquely claustrophobic domestic setting, its true strength lies not in its shocking reveal of the killer, but its nuanced portrayal of a fractured family and the corrosive effects of religious hypocrisy and parental neglect. With stellar performances, particularly from Shepard and the striking technical execution, Soleil's film earns its reputation as a disturbing, thoughtful, and enduring gem from the 1970s. So once again, I like this more than the last time I saw it, and I now give Alice Sweet Alice an 8.5 out of 10. Then up next, I'm going to have Witchhammer. This goes by the original title of Claudio na Cardogensi. I'm probably mispronouncing and butchering that one, but this is from 1970. It is directed by Otakar Vavra, who also co-wrote this with Esther Kamabakova. This is starring Ilo Romanekiv, Vladimir Shmir, and Sonia Vladatova. This is a costume drama, folk horror, period drama, psychological, history horror film that is from Czechoslovakia. This is currently sitting on a 7.7 on IMDb and a 3.9 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: in the 1600s, an overzealous clergy hauls innocent women in front of tribunals, forces them to confess to imaginary witchery, and engages in brutal torture and persecution of their subjects. So this is one that I learned about through the Letterboxd Top 250 Horror Films list. I decided to finish out where I can there, since there aren't that many that I haven't seen yet. I think I'm around like 40. So it tend to be foreign films that I've never heard of or haven't had a chance to see yet. So this is the highest rated one that was a blind spot, and this doubles as a journey through the aughts watch. So I'm going to start is that this is a frustrating film to watch, and I mean that in a good thing for the filmmakers. What is interesting is that this is its placement in horror. I absolutely believe that it deserves to be there. This is a slow burn, mostly dialogue driven. What is horrific is seeing how far these witch hunters drive these people into despair, how they break them into admitting that whatever they want, begging to be killed in the end. Now, seeing how these things and these charges are affecting what they're doing, it is definitely terrifying to just kind of see things play out. And even if you're just kind of listening to what they're kind of talking about here, I'll go ahead and say that the head of the witch hunters is going to be Boblig, portrayed by Shmir. And then, so let me bring in a little bit more about the situation and how it started. So the church holds significant sway here, evidenced by the high-ranking positions held by royalty, clergy, or church attendees. While the common folk attend, their lingering local beliefs fuel the rising fear. The thing is that they get results where praying necessarily doesn't. Boblig, noticing the opportunity, seizes it to improve his social standing, which is kind of low in the beginning. We actually learned that he was a great witch hunter who has retired, and then he is running an inn, but that's much harder work than he realized. I love how showing disheveled he looks while running his inn, and then we see how things kind of develop to the end. So the folk horror elements is well done here as well. I love how it is something as simple as stealing a wafer from communion. This leads to arresting and interrogating Marnia, who is portrayed here by Lola Skurbova. And then there's also a midwife that she was stealing it for. It is through these things that others start to be implicated. The fear then starts to grow, and as you have to accuse others in order to get some reprieve, the littlest things could be seen as witchcraft, even if it isn't true. It would be a scary time to be accused and then tortured to prove that you aren't, and it makes sense to why witch hunt is the term that it is used today. So let's go over to something else that I was looking when I was looking into this film, what they're kind of talking about here. This is from Czechoslovakia. There was a totalitarian allegory, which seems to be in direct opposition to trials that were happening under Stalin in the 1950s. It is based on a novel and court transcripts from 1670, so there is truth here to what happened. There were forced confessions mirroring what we got during the Stalinist thing. Then there is something else I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge, gave credit to here. And there's another element of infallibility of humanity. We see this early on with the character of Christoph Lauter. They call him also Dean, and that must be some sort of position that he holds there. He is portrayed by Romanek. Now, he's in favor of the trials at first. That is until he sees the limited evidence being used and the methods of obtaining it. He speaks out, which turns him into a target. Those that are on the tribunal don't speak out, enjoying the spoils, but there's fear there because they don't want to be targeted next. Now, when they see Boblig targeting those that oppose him, that keeps him quiet. This fear of being in the prisoner's chair keeps him in line. Other themes would be misogyny and repression from the church, whether it is the reoccurring man who is quoting scripture incorrectly to justify the treatment of women throughout this. I love this setting that we get in the very beginning here. I mean, part of it's because of the nudity, but we're also getting to see this bathhouse where all these women are here kind of just frolicking, enjoying their time there and everything like that, and then how broken they are in the end from torture. There's then seeing like the burned out stake, signifying how many have been executed. The church is the allegory for their push for control through punishment. This includes corruption of power, using the violence to define truth. That should be enough for the story. Let's shift over to the acting performances. Romanik excels as this pillar of society who tries to stop the events but becomes a target himself. Smearl is great villainous opportunist, a retired man turned innkeeper who exploits the situation in the village. And then another person to bring up here is Susanna, portrayed by Sonia Valentova. She is Kristoff's housekeeper. Now, she's actually prosecuted using Boblig's rules, which is actually something I haven't even brought up, is that he is basing everything he's doing off of this manuscript called the Witchhammer. And it's supposed to be outdated and barbaric, but that's what he uses, and he can justify so much with it. And then seeing Susanna's breakdown is heartbreaking, especially because of something she does in turn because of it. Everybody who endures torture, seeing their baseline where they end up is great. The rest of the cast also bring their characters to life well. All that's left then would be the filmmaking aspects. Now, I wouldn't say that the cinematography does things that are too experimental. What is great, though, is seeing capturing this village and the time period it's set, seeing how things are before the trials begin, the progression of events, and seeing the changes were also great. The atmosphere is tense. That's something to give credit to. There is limited effects, but seeing the after what things go down is enough. Sound design also helps. Hearing the screaming is heartbreaking. This is expertly made for sure. So in conclusion, this is a masterful and profoundly disturbing historical drama that earns its spot among the great horror films, though not through its overt gore, but depicting the chilling reality of systemic persecution. Vavar crafts a powerful political allegory that resonates beyond its 17th century setting, serving as a stark warning about the corrupting nature of absolute power, religious fanaticism, and the fragility of truth in the face of fear. The superb performances, tense atmosphere, and deliberately pacing combine to create an unforgettable cinematic experience that is both a historical document and timeless critique of human cruelty. The film is highly recommended from me for those who appreciate slow burn horror and deep socio-political commentary. So my rating here for Witchhammer, I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10 after this first watch. Then up next, I actually have an interesting little thing here, is that I was reached out to check this one out, and this was done by Reese Thompson. If I mispronounce your name, I do apologize, but yeah, I had seen the poster for this, so this is going to be the R.I.P Man from 2025, directed by Jamie Laglands, who also co-wrote this with Thompson. This stars Owen Llewellyn, Maximus Poling, and Jasmine Keene. This is a crime horror mystery film that is from the United Kingdom. And this is currently sitting on a 5.1 on IMDb. Not enough ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say it's hovering between like a 2 and a 3.5 star movie over there. Kind of a little bit of a range, but the synopsis. A serial killer with a rare oral condition begins to target young adults, removes a single tooth from each victim. Can a family secret that's kept unfold the truth and help prevent murders from continuing? So this is what I learned about when my buddy Aaron actually interviewed the filmmaking team. At least I know some of them. I had to double check who was. Like I said, Thompson then reached out, seeing that if I'd be interested to review. I like to check out independent cinema and help share where I can. Realize that this is technically a 2026 horror release because I think it only did a limited theatrical in the US, so it's going to be on my end of year list as well to help me round out that. So I'm going to go ahead and start though that this is a slasher film. Not my favorite genre anymore, but when they're well done, I tend to enjoy them enough. So this had a solid poster that intrigued me. Now, there's two posters out there that I've been seeing. The one that I really liked was the drill looking menacing with our killer. And then the other one I don't like as well, but I was committed to checking this out regardless. So for slashers, for me, you either have to have good kills or characters. Start with the latter here. This falls a bit short, though. What I will give credit to is that I knew who the characters in this group were. That's all I really need for a slasher film. I knew the couple that we have there. They are Donnie Slattery, portrayed by Poling, and then his girlfriend is Clarissa, played by Keene. Then they also have, like, Jaden, who is portrayed by Bruno Cryan. Now, he is dating Abigail Freight, who is portrayed by August Porter. Now, she's killed in the opening that we get. And there's also Nike Degg, portrayed by Mia Baud, and Timmy Beckwith, portrayed by Callum Chapman. So, like I said, I knew who all those people were. And then what I like here as well is that Jaden becomes kind of like a Gialli-inspired character as he's trying to figure out who the killer is, and this group works well enough. Let's then shift over to our killer. Now, this is going to be Eldon Pick. We learned this fairly early on. He's portrayed by Llewellyn. Now, I like the look of him, what he does in the opening sequence works. The mystery is learning more about his backstory and why he's doing what he is. I do like that we learn that he has this peculiar oral affliction where he doesn't have teeth. The gimmick works where he's obsessed with this as it truly bothers him, and then he ends up stealing a tooth from a victim's, like, that he kills. I even like this allusion here that there was a cult that this detective discovers, and that would be DCI Gary Mullen, portrayed by Matt Wayland. And how our killer here of Eldon is actually doing something that they used to do. It ultimately doesn't amount to much. I mean, Eldon looks angry, but my problem is that he looks a lot like Uncle Fester, so it did make me chuckle at times. And then this also has body horror, as Eldon steals teeth, reflecting a theme becoming like whole due to his affliction. Other themes would be like the burden of the past that are hidden. Eldon's adopted father provides information to the detective, though later reveals it kind of lacked impact. I like the reference to this fictional Denton's clan, which Eldon emulates. Institutional failure is also present, as Eldon escaped from a mental hospital, but nobody really seems to be doing too much to pursue him to return. I think that this is just a few things that kind of slipped through the cracks that could have kind of tightened things up again. I will say that Elfie Pick is his adopted father, who is James Wingate. So then there's one last story element that I want to bring up here, and it's some issues with writing. This group of friends have a classmate and friend who's murdered. Outside of Jaden, nobody really seems to care. The same for their classmates. It's more about how, like, the more members of their group are being killed, that fear never grows. Unless this is like an intentional thing here, showing the disconnect, I think it's lacking a bit, though. So that should be enough for the story. Let's go over to the acting performances. As an amateur film criticism, I'll be a little bit more gentle here. Llewellyn is effective as this eerie, stoic killer who dismembers his victims. Pauline and Cryan work as our leads, which is kind of interesting because the focus is on one and then it shifts to another. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to do. Keen is attractive but underutilized. Bowd and Chapman complete their group. Porter's death sets the tone well. Wayland and the rest of the cast do fulfill their roles adequately. Also have to be the filmmaking aspects. This is generally well made. We have some good cinematography hiding the effect shortcomings and capture the setting. The blood and aftermath of the kills look good. Avoiding showing too much was more than likely a smart move given likely budget limitations. I would have preferred to see more. The sound and music were adequate. However, the lack of stakes kind of just struggled to keep my attention at times. In conclusion, this offers a decent slasher experience from an independent cinema scene. While the film struggles with character depth and maintaining a consistent sense of stakes among the targeted friend group, it succeeds in creating a compelling villain with a unique, unsettling gimmick surrounding his oral affliction and tooth-stealing obsession. The technical aspects, including the cinematography and effective use of blood effects, help mask budget constraints. It's a film that leans into body horror elements and works well as a genre piece, but ultimately lacks the necessary tension to truly stand out. If you're looking for a new independent horror film with an interesting premise and solid performance from the leads, this is worth checking out if you're into like slasher films like this. But for me, unfortunately, for the R.I.P Man, I have to give it a 4 out of 10. And this one, I believe, is actually going to, I think it's on VOD now if you are interested. And my last mini review here is going to be Anacoreta. I think that's how you say that, but it's from 2022, but it's getting its wide release here in 2026. This is directed by Jeremy Schutze, who also co-wrote this with Matt Visser. Now, they both star in this with Antonia Thomas. This is a found footage horror film that's from Canada, currently sitting on a 6.2 on IMDb, and none of ratings on Letterboxd, but I would say about a 3 to a 3.5 star movie over there. With our synopsis being, a group of friends travel for a weekend away to an isolated cabin in the woods to shoot an experimental horror movie. Slowly, the film begins to unravel, and we see the true monster appear from the shadows. So this is one that I learned about thanks to Justin Cook. He sent over a press release with the opportunity to check out the screener. Now, this was interesting as it originally hit festivals back in 2022. Having now seen this, I can guess that this was probably a hard one to market, as well as probably one that's going to be one that either you love it or hate it. So I do like to, round out my horror film list. So this one here for 2026 with some independent films, and then this also doubles as a trek through the twos. So I'm going to start though is with the concept. You can tell this doesn't have a large budget. We're working with what they have, and that's something I appreciate. So I'm a fan of found footage filming style, especially when you're doing it in horror. The problem is that it can be a bit oversaturated, so needing to do something different to set it apart is important. I like how this plays with perceptions and not knowing what is real, and that's something I'm going to give credit to. So our director here though is going to be Jeremy, and that's actually the real director and co-writer, who's portrayed by Schutze. His girlfriend is Antonia, portrayed by Thomas, and then his friend who's helping him make this is going to be Matt, portrayed by Visser, and then there's also Jesse, who's portrayed by Jesse Stanley, and I get the idea that Jesse and Jeremy might be related somehow, but I'm not fully sure. It never gets explored from what I could remember. And then the guy who is actually filming behind the camera is going to be Gully, portrayed by Ben Gulliver, and then there is Alonzo, who is doing the sound and everything like that, he is portrayed by Alonzo Lozano Arellano. And then we also have Derek Nansen, who's also in this as well. But this one is an interesting little character study that centers on this group. We are highlighting, Antonia's talent, with which Jeremy benefits from this, since his friends are just kind of really just playing themselves, not really showing much range. And I just mean in the characters they're playing. Thomas effectively showcases her skills. Jeremy is revealed to be the antagonist as things go on, with his reoccurring frustrations becoming apparent early, and his questionable drive, which is called out by Matt for abandoning a previous project, which is actually the name of this film, and this contrasts with his vision. So the group's long-standing, authentic dynamic is well established, actually. I then want to delve into the story that we're getting here. Jeremy's grandfather was a writer. It seems like he lived in this cabin. Jeremy wants to use it for the location for this film while his family still owns it. And it sounds like his parents want to sell, and he is using found footage. So we're seeing what is being filmed. There are cracks here that are breaking characters. So we are seeing what is making of this movie. The blurring of the fantasy was a good touch. I did appreciate that. Then to explore other themes, this is like the deconstructing of the cabin in the woods tropes. We see scares that you'd get in a location like this, but since it's manipulating the truth, it brings us into question what is, an attempt at manufacturing fear. The isolation and location add to it. Even though when you peek farther into the frame, it isn't necessarily as remote. We then see how isolation can drive characters apart, especially seeing things that Jeremy is doing without their knowledge. There is a blurring of reality in the untrustworthy narrative. Let's then go over to the acting performances. I've already said that Thomas was good. Schutze does well in making the viewer dislike him, whether he is whiny for not getting his way or just kind of seeing how far he'll go for this project to work. I don't completely hate him, though, because he does have his vision and things are falling apart. Visser works as his friend. Stanley was also solid. She is having, psychological issues that Jeremy isn't being sensitive to. Thought that Gulliver, El Ronaldo, and Nansen round this out for what was needed. All that's left then would be filmmaking aspects. This is largely well made, effectively utilizing the found footage style to explore the concept of reality being limited to what is in frame. Jeremy's frequent scolding and Gully for showing too much emphasis that of this broken fantasy type thing. The use of microphones and Alonzo's equipment highlighting the invasion of privacy. While effects are minimal and unnecessary, the film's main weakness is its meandering pace, which is difficult to follow and hold attention. So in conclusion, this is an ambitious, low-budget horror film that uses found footage aesthetic to cleverly deconstruct the film's genre's tropes and explore themes of manipulation, artistic obsession, and the untrustworthy nature of perceived reality. Strong performances, notably from Thomas and Schutze as this unsettling antagonist. Jeremy powered the smart, divisive, independent film. Its compelling meta-narrative successfully blends stage and genuine psychological horror, though the deliberately slow, meandering pace may deter some. Recommended for fans of meta and psychological thrillers that challenge perception. So my rating here for Anacoreta, I actually had this originally as a rating, and as I was kind of reviewing it and kind of recording this and everything, I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. And this should be hitting VOD here soon if you are curious. Then I have a documentary that I covered as a screener of Skywatcher. This is from 2026. This is directed by Clive Christopher, who also directed this with Dan Starkey. And they both wrote this together. They both star in this along with Chris Donald. So this is considered just an adventure film that is from the United States. It's actually not able to be rated yet on IMDb. There is no letterbox page. And the synopsis is: follow Clive and Dan Starkey as they search the skies in Sedona, Arizona for proof of extraterrestrial life. They come up with a theory that can help explain some odd phenomena that people experience. So it's a documentary I got a chance to see when Lauren from Breaking Glass Pictures reached out. So there's just a press release. I realized there's another documentary here from Christopher, and I've seen Aliens Uncovered Invasion here recently, and I believe he brings up this trip that is documented here. Other than knowing that, I came into this one blind. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of say is that the synopsis does well in describing this. It's interesting that we have this opening and ending of this are the same footage. They're in a vehicle and they approach a location that was used by Northern Arizona University for research purposes, and the ending is only slightly different because it's actually extended. Now, for most of this, we're discussing this theory that there are these unexplained things that are seen in the sky. Their theory is that maybe time travel is involved. It could explain why they appear from seemingly nowhere and then disappear once again. When they bring this up, though, it's interesting that this is kind of a plausible idea. There is another element that Dan talks about with how dust devils appear before him. It moved from what they consider to be a hot spot with the equipment they're using, and it was heading towards his truck. His doors were open, so he was worried, and he calls out for it to stop, and it does. It ends up coming back to the spot that it formed and disappears. He believes there could be a spirit of a nun. Another aspect of the documentary he brings up is that this area has a high concentration of hematite stone. That might also be a factor into the explanation. So it's from here that we shift over to a night where this duo is out in the desert filming the sky. They bring out the equipment they're using, helps to catch things that maybe the naked eye couldn't see. They point out the satellites, and then there's like airplanes. They believe that there are other things that they've recorded that are undisputed proof that there are aliens out there. Let me then preface that I don't necessarily agree with what they're showing us as irrefutable. I also don't necessarily see what they were pointing to at times. That could also be a me issue. I will just say that I can't prove anything wrong with what they're saying. I do believe that there are aliens out there somewhere in outer space. I just don't believe that they necessarily have come to Earth. I am open to evidence. I'll then just go ahead and say this is well made. The images do look crisp. I'll credit the cinematography and framing there. This looks professionally done, so that's something else to credit. Starkey and Christopher are passionate, and I appreciate that. My biggest issue is that it's repetitive. There's a story here about a dust devil that we hear at least twice. It just feels like they didn't necessarily have enough material for the runtime, so they just did what they could to pad it out. It does slow it down for me a bit, though. So in conclusion, this is a professional-looking and passionately produced documentary that offers an interesting theory regarding potential extraterrestrial activity, particularly due to the unique geology of Sedona. While the passion of Christopher and Starkey is admirable, the film struggles with pacing due to repeated stories suggesting a lack of sufficient material to justify the runtime. For those who are already open to the idea of UFOs visiting Earth, this will be likely a compelling watch. However, for skeptics, the presented proof may remain debatable, leaving the audience with a well-shot but ultimately inconclusive exploration of the unknown. So my rating here for Skywatchers, though, I gave this one a 6 out of 10, and I believe it should be hitting either VOD or Tubi here soon. And then I have 4 episodes from the original run of the Twilight Zone, and the first one's going to be I Am the Night, Color Me Black. So this was directed by Abner Biberman. It was written by Rod Serling. It is starring Michael Constantine, Paul Fix, and George Lindsay. And this one, the sun doesn't rise on a small town where an execution is scheduled to take place. So for this one here, have Sheriff Charlie Cook, who is portrayed by Constantine as he's waking up his wife, as Ellen, portrayed by Eve McVeigh. They're kind of talking. It's very early in the morning, but the sun isn't up yet, and it doesn't come up, and people are starting to get worried. We have somebody who is held up who did something very bad. He committed some crimes, and that person is actually going to be Yeager, portrayed by Terry Becker. So there is this newspaper editor who kind of gets involved here of Colby, portrayed by Paul Fix. Yeager is self-proclaimed to be dumb. He's just a town drunk, supposedly. This is actually pointing out the hypocrisy of man and animals, that we have executions and everything like that, how humanity is not that much different from animals by doing dark things like this. It's perpetual dark is making everybody on edge, and it seems to be turning everybody to religion, which definitely feels it might have inspired like The Mist. And then we also have this deputy of Pierce, portrayed by George Lindsay. He is very gung-ho. He thinks doing the execution is exactly what they need. And then I would kind of question, is the darkness just on the village? It is at first, but there's a great thing that we hear later in this where it is over other places as well, who I'm assuming has definitely different serious things going on here. So the sheriff is bent to the will of the town, wants to get reelected. So when we're seeing giving up your principles for your own gain, the tension here is great. Then there's this minister that gets involved of Reverend Anderson, portrayed by Ivan Dixon. And what he does is, Yeager kind of lashes out at him, but there's actually a great thing here, like a commentary on mob mentality and the majority. The minister wants to give peace, the townspeople are bloodthirsty, and the darkness is truly their hate, and it's growing. And then Pierce is trying to convince everybody that the minister is wrong, which, kind of makes a whole lot of sense. We have similar pockets of darkness are appearing all over the place, like I was saying, as a thing, hate growing here. I actually love this episode. This might be one of my favorite episodes of all time. I actually gave this one a 10 out of 10, surprisingly. And then the next one up is going to be Sounds in Silence. This was directed by Richard Donner, written by Rod Serling, and it stars John McGiver, Michael Fox, Renee Aubrey. Now, this is a retired Navy man and current model ship manufacturing company owner Roswell Flemington. Enjoys loud noises as it's an annoyance to others, drives his wife to leave him, and suitably punished with a full dose of irony. So that Roswell guy is going to be portrayed by John McGiver. And he pretends to be a captain at sea by listening to these records of wind and water while he naps. So he runs his business like a ship. puns of like sailing terms. Now his wife breaks his record because she's sick of it. She's had enough, and she's portrayed by Penny Singleton. And then it seems to be like a neuroses that he's developed as a boy. He was always told to be quiet and to do different things like that. So he's determined to do everything as loud as possible now. But then he's haunted. The irony here is that he wakes up one day and sounds have just been amplified, I believe, to the extreme, but he also can't hear in general. It's kind of a weird little thing, but he's haunted by dripping and ticking. Goes to a doctor who is portrayed by Francis DeSales to get checked out. He even goes to a shrink, and he blames his wife for everything. He can't hear the records he's playing or like glass breaking, but like there's just little things that are haunting him. So this is kind of an interesting little, be careful type thing as it kind of gets its revenge here. And I end up giving this one a 6.5 out of 10. And then up next I'm going to have is Caesar and Me. This was directed by Robert Butler. It was written by Adele T. Strassfield. Stars Jackie Cooper, Morgan Brittany, and Sarah Shelby. And this was when Irish ventriloquist Johnny West cannot find any work. His dummy Caesar suggests that he turns to burglary. So that Jonathan, the ventriloquist, is going to be portrayed by Cooper. And we see that he pawns his watch, but can't. The pawn shop owner wants to buy, this is portrayed by Stafford Rep, he wants to buy Caesar. So the former owner skipped out on him, and we actually see that when they're not even performing that Jonathan talks to Caesar. And then there's a little girl who wants him to show how it works, and she is Susan, portrayed by Morgan Brittany. And then her aunt is actually the landlady, who is Agnes Kudaha, portrayed by Selby. He refuses, doesn't want to really do anything. He can't find a job, though, either. And he really doesn't want to do anything. Like, he definitely self-sabotages there. And then he's behind on his rent. So then Caesar actually comes up with a plan. Is that to rob a nearby delicatessen. So Susan overhears everything through the door. She's snooping, and she tries to coerce Caesar into talking to her. She actually calls the cops. And then this brings a Don Grazaniga in to, talk to him, do a little bit of interview there. And then we end up seeing that Jonathan goes to a club that he's worked at. He tries to crack the safe. Now, Caesar's very rude to John all the time. So Susan does what she can, and, she's the one that brings the police here. John ends up starting to break down. Caesar won't answer him, and that makes it even worse. And there's actually a little kind of interesting reveal here at the end where Caesar might have found his new person to be helping him, but I rather enjoyed this one. This one kind of feels like a different variation on different things that we've seen with puppets, whether it is, Dead of Night, or there's been other episodes of Twilight Zone that's also featured this, but I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. Then the last one I'm going to do for this episode is going to be The Jeopardy Room. This is also directed by Richard Donner and written by Rod Serling. Stars Martin Landau, John Van Drelen, and Bob Kellegen. So Russian defector Ivan Kuchenko is trapped in a hotel room and given 3 hours to locate a hidden bomb hidden there by Commissar Vasilov, who aspires to turn Ivan's proposed execution into an art form. So the major is actually going to be portrayed by Landau, and then the Commissar is going to be portrayed by Van Drelen. And so Boris, actually, who is his assistant to the Commissar, is Kellegen. Now, he has a gun, wants to shoot Ivan, but his Commissar won't let him. He actually goes and visits him, was the one who ended up calling him as well, and they warn him that there's a bomb in his room, that he can't leave, that he must find it. Definitely a cat and mouse here. Ivan knows he was an interrogator, offers him a drink, and it's a smug little back and forth here, but the wine has been drugged, so Ivan passes out. And that's when they hide something in his room. And he has a limited time to find it. And if he goes to leave, like I was saying, will be shot. And then it's actually kind of interesting here is that Ivan starts to do something. And just to show that they're not messing around, Boris starts to shoot. And then it's kind of interesting in this whole kind of issue here where they kind of lose sight of him for a bit. Somehow, Ivan got out. And then this is where everything kind of has an interesting little ending here. I thought it was a little cheeky way of doing things, but I ended up giving this one a 7 out of 10. So that's all I have here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
This is the color of black, baby. It's a whole lot different than white.
I'm a devil. He's a goddamn devil, man. What kind of giant is man? You let that devil sit all the goddamn lies on you. You let this devil and tell all them goddamn lies, man. stupid mother! What the hell? I'll do whatever the situation demands. Take him out.
Hey, baby. 10 and 3?
Oh, man. Why you gotta put me through all this? You know the going rate is 20 and 3.
Okay, 20 and 3. Welcome home, Brother Charles. You done the man's time. Now you're gonna do ours.
Hey, baby, what's happening? Hey, man, you telling me to wait, man, let the biggest dope push in all of sunny Southern California out on the streets again? Hey, baby, damn!
And I'll take it off.
Oh, baby, that's a deal.
Dirty, slimy bastard! That's why I meet a man the first chance I get.
Welcome home, Brother Charles. A motion picture about the way it is and the way some people think it should be.
That kind of hatred brings on mania.
Look, I didn't come here to be called a maniac, Doctor. Now, a man damn near cuts my manhood off. Now, what am I supposed to do? Nothing? Tell him to come downstairs.
Come down for a moment, dear, please.
What's the matter, honey?
Why don't you sit down on the floor, face that far?
But surely you don't take it seriously. All right, hold. Hey, hold it! Goddamn see. I get back, I'll jump, hold it.
Welcome home, Brother Charles. They tried to take everything, even his manhood.
And for my first featured review here is going to be Welcome Home, Brother Charles. This is from 1975, written and directed by Jama Fanica. This is starring Marlo Monti, Rithria Gray, and Stan Camber. This is also featuring here Tiffany Peters, Ben Bigelow, Jake Carter, Jackie Ziegler, Ed Sander, Terry Hayden, Stephen Shinek, Kamala James, Mordo Dana, Elizabeth McAlpine, Jack Gregory, Geraldine Marble, Jimmy Butler, Al Minifield, and Charles D. Brooks III. Now, this is an action drama horror film that's from the United States, currently sitting on a 4.9 on IMDb and a 3.2 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: after being released, a wrongfully imprisoned black man exacts vengeance on those who have crossed him. So this is a film that I heard about in a documentary. My guess is it would have been one about exploitation films falling into the subgenre of blaxploitation. I'll be honest, I didn't remember much about what that had said about it. So for the IMDb, this one had it listed as horror. Knowing this information was enough to watch it for Black History Month as I kind of explore, the horror aspects of it. And it doubles as a Voyage to the Fives watch as well. So let's do some featured notes here, and I'm going to start with our director, Fanica. He's helmed 6 films and 1 short. Interestingly enough, I know of him because of my buddy Jake, who I do side quests with, as he brought up the penitentiary films. These are like wild prison fighting movies, so this is the only of his works that I've seen so far and in genre. Then as a writer, he has the same credits that he has directed. Moving down to our cast, we have Monty. This is his only feature film. Now, Gray has a solid career. This is actually her feature film debut. That's the only trivia I was able to find on IMDb, but she had a solid little career being in 15 movies and 1 short. I've seen her in 2. Has 3 in genre. I've seen this in Spree. I have not seen The Terror of Hallows Eve. Then last, I'll look at Camber. He's been in 5 motion pictures, first that I've seen. He did work with this director one other time, though, as he was in Penitentiary 2. This is his only work that he has done in genre. So then for this one here, we actually started near the end, and we are on a roof where we have Charles, portrayed by Monty, who is trying to be talked off the ledge. The cop is trying to help him is Jim Cunningham, portrayed by Camber. They call a woman in to help. We then jump into the past to see what led us here. So we're in a neighborhood in Los Angeles. We have Carmen, portrayed by Gray, who is a prostitute, and she is talking to a potential John. He is portrayed by Sander. She tells him actually to meet her at a nearby motel that's around the corner. We then meet her pimp, who is portrayed by Minifield, and he is quite harsh. Now, selling drugs out of this motel is ND, portrayed by Carter, and then Charles. They notice a car is watching them. They expect a bust is coming, so they make a plan and flee. So the cop who let them get away is Harry Freeman, portrayed by Bigelow. He is partnered with Jim. They are staking out another place. Then something happens that rocks Harry's world. A woman shows up, and she is Christina, portrayed by Peters. She is the wife to Harry. He wants to confront her, but Jim talks him down. Now there's a bomb at LAX that needs their attention, and we actually get to see that she is for sure having an affair. So Charles ends up getting arrested, and Harry takes his frustration out on him. He goes too far, cutting off Charles's penis. We then see the trial where the people are lying on the stand. That would actually be with Harry there. The judge is the John from the opening sequence, and the prosecutor's going a little bit over the top here and congratulating Harry for his work and Jim for being like partners with such a courageous man. That prosecutor's being portrayed by Shenek. So Charles is off to prison where he is tormented with his thoughts. So 3 years later, he gets out. He goes to the home of his girlfriend. Before he went in, and his girlfriend is Twyla, portrayed by Ziegler. So her mother doesn't like him, and she wants him to leave. What is revealed here is that Twyla now works at a seedy bar, and we see she's actually kind of like a go-go dancer type thing. We actually see her topless at one point, but she is now dating ND. He's taken over with Charles away. Carmen is there, though, and when Charles realizes who she is, he's happy to see her. Then these two actually start a life together where she gets out of, turning tricks and everything. She becomes a waitress, and yeah. So these two are at home. He's struggling to find a job, and he sees Harry on television. He just made a big bust. Charles is bent on revenge. We then see that there's a change that comes over him with what Harry did. Charles uses the wife of Harry to help set up his plan. He has an interesting way of putting her into a trance. Harry is just the first, as he wants to punish all those that ruined his life all those years ago. So let's leave my recap introduction of the characters. Where I want to start is something that I saw from other reviews. It sparked me to look into it. This seems like this was a student film, or if it wasn't, it definitely is a case where the production didn't have a large budget. What they were able to do was fine in spite of that. It still comes with its flaws, but I think there's an interesting thing to say here. Now that it's set up, let me look at some of the blaxploitation tropes. Featuring a married white judge soliciting a black prostitute, which immediately introduces a theme of marital infidelity. The film includes multiple instances of cheating, white police officers, surveilling on black people, and a courtroom corruption leading to Charles' wrongful imprisonment. Importantly, the black characters are given complexity while the white characters function solely as oppressors. I would actually say, though, Jim has a little bit of where he doesn't seem like he's a horrible person. I'll kind of come back to that here in a little bit. But yeah, no issues with the type of tropes they're playing with here. Let's then look at how this explores infidelity. Christina cheats on Harry, who initially becomes passive-aggressive before turning violent. Charles's revenge involves targeting wives first, which he is able to hypnotize them through sexual intercourse. Charles himself is not a moral character, as he cheats on Carmen as part of this plot. Ultimately, the film depicts marriage negatively, in my opinion. Let's then look at the character of Charles, who is a criminal at first. He attempts to reform after prison, but struggles due to his record. He notices his former partner, ND, is now kind of hood wealthy, a critical event in Harry's rage-fueled castration of our lead. So then, however, Charles later regains a larger manhood, which he's able to somehow hypnotize women. We actually get to see one scene that's kind of funny where he attacks a husband with it. I find this turn played for comedy outrageous for an otherwise serious film, despite understanding the filmmaker's intent. So the last scene that I want to bring up here will be exploring the white man's fear of black men. And then I'm going to tread lightly here because I am Caucasian, so I have not necessarily experienced this per se, but this fear is explored early on when Harry sees his wife cheating on him. It is made worse that it's with a black man. This fear is taken farther by having Harry castrate Charles, or at least attempt to. I'll then shift slightly here to include that this is also exploring like urban decay and disenfranchisement due to the corruption of the justice system. Their exploration of these things are good, just the tone of the film being off loses its message a bit. I think that's where I'll go next with the filmmaking aspects. This is technically made well enough with some good cinematography, effectively capturing the setting from Charles' arrest and brief prison time to his return to the neighborhood after 3 years. While the drama's good, the tone becomes jarring and comical when Charles exacts revenge using a prehensile phallus. It comes out of nowhere, but it doesn't ruin the film, and we have an eerie soundtrack that I thought was good, and I want to give credit to it. So all that's left then to be some actor performances here. Despite an amateur feel, this succeeds well enough with its characters. Monty, the lead, wants a normal life with Carmen post-prison, but his record forces him into vengeance. Gray offers him support and sees him better than pretty much everybody around him, and sees him for being a good man. Camber is morally ambiguous cop who enables his partner's corruption, so to me, he's corrupt. And then I'll also say here, like Peters, Bigelow, Sander, Shennick, and those who are incarcerated, Charles, they're all effective as being like these white villainous characters in some way, shape, or form. Carter, is a nightclub running criminal, serves as a mirror to the men who have ruined Charles's life. Supporting characters fulfilled their roles well. In conclusion, this is a compelling, if tonally uneven piece of blaxploitation cinema that manages to tackle serious themes of systemic injustice, racism, and urban decay despite its clear low-budget constraints. I thought the director here of Foneka's film portrays a black man's understandable quest for vengeance against his corrupt white establishment, like a judge, a prosecutor, and police, which descends into a bizarre, infamous kind of sexual supernaturalism. Despite amateur acting and technical issues, this remains a fascinating, potent artifact. It uses extreme narrative devices to explore complex 1970s Los Angeles anxieties about black male power, white fear, and infidelity. This succeeds as a relevant, commentary with its jarring blend of social drama and outrageous horror comedy, slightly muddled by its core message. But like I said, I thought that I enjoyed kind of what it's trying to do here. I'm not going to do a spoiler section, I'll say that right here. But for me, Welcome Home, Brother Charles, I'll give this a 6.5 out of 10. I'm not going to do a spoiler section, like I said, so let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
You're a monster.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
We were all going direct to heaven, and all going direct to hell. I don't know what it is about this house, but I feel its energy. Please let me make it my home.
Deal. Oh, come on. Don't tell me you're still renting out that pile of bricks.
You notice any unusual activity in the neighborhood the past couple of days?
You look worried.
What do you need with me?
A friend of mine told me that I can't save the world. I'm trying to prove him wrong.
This isn't right. You're playing God.
I'm a surgeon. God prays to me.
He's hiding something.
Act like an animal. Get treated like a woman.
You took the Hippocratic Oath. Do no harm.
You know, for you, I'm prepared to make an exception.
And for my second featured review here is going to be Twisted from 2026. This is directed by Darren Lynn Bousman. It was written between Jonathan Bernstein and James Greer. This stars Digimon Hauso, Lauren Lavera, and Alicia Witt. I think that's how you say her first name. This also, though, is featuring the likes of Neil McDonough, Gina Phillips, Mia Haley, something like that. David Call, Prof, Michael Lombardi, Renes Rivera, Christina Krajnicki, Victor Del Rio, Hara Bashkar, Zach Jeffy, Isaiah Levi John, Cynthia Clancy, Peter Rosapina, and Cedric Benjamin. So this is a horror thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 4.7 on IMDb and a 2.4 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis here being: follows two millennials who flip New York apartments that they don't own to new buyers who don't know that they're being scammed. The con works brilliantly until they run into an apartment owner with a dark secret who flips the game on them. So this is a film that I didn't know much about. I saw it hit VOD and the reviews were mixed. I looked a bit more into this, and realizing that it was directed by Bousman and starring Lavera and Houso, I figured I'd watch it. Part of the reason as well is that there wasn't a new release in the horror film, or like a horror film in the theater that I wanted to go see at this time, so that made it easy. And let's do some featured notes. Start with our director here, Bousman. I'm sure I've brought him up before, but he's somebody I've seen a good amount of his works. He's directed 20 features and 3 shorts. I've seen 9. I've seen his Saw trilogy, which were 2 through 4. I've seen Spiral from the Book of Saw and Tales of Halloween. He's done 18 in genre. I've seen half. Top 3 that I'm missing right now are Repo, the Genetic Opera, which I will be watching here in the nearest future, hopefully, The Devil's Carnival, and Death of Me. We have 2 assistant directors. The first one's going to be Van Hayden. He's done this for 12 films and 2 shorts. I've seen 4. Not horror. I've seen Kids, Hustle and Flow, and Bring It On, Fight to the Finish. A weird array of movies right there. This is the first foray he's done in horror. Then the other one is going to be Jenny O'Keefe Armas. They've done this for 2 works. Only one they've done in horror, and the only one that I've seen. There's 2 writers. First is going to be Bernstein. He's written 7 movies and 1 short. I've seen 2 now, both in horror. They're the only 2 released so far, with the other one being Unsane. He wrote an upcoming film of The Cure that is slated for later this year. Then the other is going to be Greer. It looks like they have 2 these 2 are writing partners, as there's a lot of crossover. He's wrote 8 motion pictures. I've seen 2. He has 1 additional one that Bernstein didn't do, which is going to be Mirror Moves. Then to our cast first is going to be Houso. He's been in 64 features and 3 shorts. I've seen 21 of them. Not horror is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy, Gladiator, Captain Marvel, and did a voice in How to Train Your Dragon 2. He's been in 6 horror films. I've seen 5. I've seen A Quiet Place 2, and as well as Day 1. Constantine, Deep Rising in this. I have not seen the Vatican tapes. The next will be Lavera. She's been in 18 films and 17 shorts. I've seen 4 of her works for 22%, all in genre. 8 of those are going to be our horror. She's done 8 horror films total, 50% that I've seen. I've seen Terrifier 2 and 3, The Well, and now this. I have not seen The Fetus, Clinton Road, or The Hunter's Anthology, and she's also going to be in the upcoming Terrifier 4. Then to look at Helly, she's been in 3 films, first that I've seen, only 1 in horror. I also wanted to look at McDougall, just because he's been in 83 films and 5 shorts. I've seen 15. I've seen Captain America, The First Avenger, Minority Report, Sonic. In horror, he's done 10. I've seen 5. I've seen 1922, Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, Ravenous, The Hitcher remake, and now this. I have not seen I Know Who Killed Me, Skill House, or The Unspoken as the top 3 that I am missing at this time. Let's then jump into this movie here. We start this with Emma, portrayed by Lavera, who is showing a house. She is flirting with the guy that she's showing it to. Now, she is able to convince him to sign the lease. By the end, she tells him to bring wine, come back later to pick up the keys. It is then that he discovers it was a scam. She didn't own the house, and he already paid. So Emma's real name is Paloma. She's a con artist along with her girlfriend Smith, portrayed by Healy. Their current scam involves renting Airbnbs for extended stays to pose as the owners. Paloma, who uses the names of literary characters, receives a message from somebody named Daisy Buchanan, which is, famously from The Great Gatsby. Emma being from a Jane Austen novel. So this person seems to be a police officer with the location of their IP address. That they didn't hide that, and Paloma thinks that was an intentionally thing done. So Smith fears that they're going to be caught and wants to flee, bringing up a past incident where they almost did in Baltimore. So Paloma comes up with a plan. They both were going to do one more job. Whoever does it first gets to choose where they move to next. Smith reluctantly agrees. Paloma wants a brownstone, or rents a brownstone that belongs to a Dr. Robert Kezian, portrayed by Houso. Now, it is here we learn about him. He's the head of neurosurgery at a nearby institute. His boss is Bradshaw, portrayed by McDougall. Robert is running trials as an experimental procedure. They need approval from the government to start human trials. There's urgency here that Bradshaw tries to keep in check. So Robert then meets with Paloma. We learned a little bit more about his backstory. The love of his life is no longer with us. She is Rebecca, portrayed by Whit. Now, this is due to a rare brain condition. He explains that this was their place, he just can't give it up. He tends to stay more at a place around the corner that belonged to her parents who have also passed, or who have passed, which seems to be close, like I was saying. Now, Paloma gets along well with him, and he provides the information that she needs for her stay. This is where things kind of ends up get set up, and she starts to show the place. This includes disconnecting cameras around it. She is struggling to get somebody to bite. Things take a turn when a guy named Tad, portrayed by David Call, is shown around. He gets aggressive with her, angered that she's flirting. He feels like she's being a tease. Robert has one camera that she missed, watching her while she showed him around, and then he has to intervene because it gets very violent. Knowing the scam that she is running, he takes her prisoner in a dungeon that he has set up. Robert might have found his test subjects to prove his theory. And we also get to see that there's two detectives who are onto the scam. There's Greg, who's not necessarily. He's portrayed by Lombardi. But things aren't adding up for Warwicker, portrayed by Phillips. When Tad disappears and other strange things happen around this area, she knows that there is more than what Robert is letting on. So that's really my recap of the characters. While the plot resembles others that I've seen, this variation was appealing. The core tension comes from the lead character being a criminal. Paloma, who's con with Smith, is the only lead to her whereabouts. Then you have this added thing here of the mad scientist stuff, reminiscent of classic Universal monster sequels, which heightened my interest. Now that I set up, I did want to delve a little bit more into our lead of Paloma. She has a feel that she's untouchable. She is tempting fate by using a fake name, showing places that she doesn't know, and getting people to stay to purchase them. It makes sense that most of the people here are suckered or would be men. We are dumb when a beautiful woman flirts with us. Lavera, her looks aid to that. She's also has some natural charisma that fits the role. The arrogance that comes with that feeling of invincibility leads to her downfall as well. Let's look at her co-star of Hausu, who is a veteran actor. I appreciate his range in blockbusters to indies, noting he's always a consistent professional. He's convincing as his mad scientist broken by his wife's death, evidenced by his obsession with watching only video of old videos of her. And then I can relate to the loss, just not to this level of extremity. I enjoy his initial benevolent portrayal, especially with Paloma and a young patient before his darker, depraved side emerges. Hausu fits his role well. Then looking at the mad scientist angle here, the first part of it is that we learn that there's a dungeon of sorts. It's made to look like a clinic. The reason there makes sense with his level of wealth, and it works, it fits, all that stuff. How it's hidden was good. There's a subtle reveal. Now, I won't spoil it completely with what his goal is. What I will say is it involves a brain transplant of sorts. Not to the level that you get with some of the Frankenstein films, but still kind of playing with that idea a bit. It's a more grounded approach that makes sense, and I like where they're doing there. There is an interesting side effect. So the last element of the story that I want to include here would be certain lines that are said. One of them is something that Paloma says to Smith. The latter says, I love you. Paloma replies with something along the lines of same. When pressed, she doesn't see the importance of certain words. It doesn't change her feelings. There's another line that is a stinger at the end that was fitting. So that should be enough for the story. Let's go over to the acting performances. I've already said that our two leads were good. What is great is Lavera is, we're seeing how strong she is to start and how her ordeal being kidnapped is breaking her. Hausu, on the other hand, seems good in the beginning, revealing a dark side as events develop. Healy works to help humanize Paloma and also for somebody to look for her. I like McDougall in his role. Whit was solid in hers as well. Other than that, I thought Phillips, Lombardi, and the rest of the cast rounded us out for what was needed. All that's left then to be the filmmaking aspects. The cinematography and framing were strong, particularly in capturing the beauty of this location. Paloma, when she's showcasing all these stuff like that, highlighting her skills. The use of fuzzy focus when characters are dizzy or drugged. The technique of rotating the image on its side during key moments, or at least kind of a little bit to the side. That was effective. The practical or just well-hidden CGI, blood and effects were solid. The soundtrack was adequate, but unremarkable. So in conclusion, this offers an entertaining and familiar premise elevated by strong performances and effective filmmaking techniques. Boseman crafts a visually compelling film, particularly from benefiting the magnetic lead dynamic between Lavera and Hausu. The story successfully blends a modern-day con artist thriller with a classic mad scientist horror trope, leading to an intense and unsettling final act. While not completely original concept, the movie's execution, its subtle reveals, and unsettling nature of its central experiment make it a worthwhile watch for fans of psychological horror with a genre twist. So my rating here then, for Twisted, I gave this a 7 out of 10. Rather enjoyed what this one was doing. Not great, but I mean, yeah, So that's why I'm just going to go ahead and leave that. Not going to do a spoiler section, nothing like that. So let me go ahead and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with out-of-this-world award-winning podcasts found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, out of this world.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jitter an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNA15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash. Fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So, yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode is going to be jumping back into doing my Centennial Club episodes. This is going to be number 22. As the 2 featured reviews, I was trying to find a way to get to the Gateway Film Center to check out a movie called Redux. The times that they have don't work for my schedule, and it doesn't look like it's going to be staying for more than a week, so I'm going to check this out on VOD. That's going to be my 2026 watch, and I'm going to be pairing this up with A Page of Madness. I believe this is from Japan and from 1926, or else it doesn't make sense to be doing Centennial Club. So those are going to be the 2 featured reviews, and then Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch is going to be God Told Me To. I think this is a Larry Cohen film. I've been excited to revisit this one. I've only seen it once. I remember being wild and everything like that. I have a couple of screeners. One's going to be NFT Cursed Images. The other one's going to be Dark Distortions. And then I'll have more mini reviews to go along with that as well. So I don't think there's anything else I need to do here for this outro outside of saying... That wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending